Hey everyone, it's Akrasia here, back with another video on XDefiant. I've made a few videos on XDefiant already, which is not usually my style of content. I do want to get back into my GMVs and AMVs soon, but for now I am actually having quite a bit of fun making these kinds of videos too. Of course, by the title, we're talking about sniping in XDefiant once again. In my last video titled, Is XDefiant Ruining Snipers?, I did a deep dive into the nerfs that snipers receive in an attempt to understand the balancing logic behind these nerfs. If you haven't watched the video, I would encourage you to check it out, at least before you feel the need to comment saying I'm wrong or whatever. Anyway, what actually prompted me to make this video, after already making a full-length video on snipers, is that I actually got a reply from the man himself, Mark Rubin, who responded to my feedback on snipers. This interaction happened on Twitter, which I just want to say that I absolutely love how much these developers engage with their community. Even if we're delivering some harsh feedback or expressing our disagreement towards the game's direction, you can see the effort that they put into engaging with their fans and at least showing that they're trying to improve their game. Now, I did not hold back in my feedback that I provided. I was very open and honest in my disagreement towards the game's direction, and I stand by that. But I appreciate the fact that Mark was willing to listen to me and gave me a very good response to some of the points that I had made. I won't go into detail with the whole Twitter thread, but basically what led to Mark's reply was a comment that I made about their balancing decisions for snipers. I said that what the developers have done is made garbage balance choices for snipers based on complaints rather than actually balancing them, and that the developers need to put more thought, more data, and actually make balancing decisions around fairness rather than listening to people who complain. I stand by what I said here because I do feel like some of the choices around balancing certain aspects of the game, like snipers, have been heavily driven by complaints within the community rather than what's best for balancing the game. These tweets prompted Mark to respond with a big block of text that I'll place here. Feel free to pause and take a look. I'm not going to read it all at once because I will read it piece by piece shortly. But the reason I wanted to make this video is because I responded to this with a massive thread on Twitter, and I feel like it's more difficult to get the point across that way. Also, since responding, I saw a bunch of other very good comments from some other players who gave their suggestions to balance snipers that I hadn't even thought of yet, and I would like to cover that in this video. So let's take it from the top. To start things off, Mark says, "What makes you think we don't look at data? We have loads of data. Balancing means looking at data, making adjustments, and then looking at data again and making more adjustments. Also, data isn't the end-all be-all of tuning. There are other factors." Okay, Mark, what is the data that you're referring to here? I would love to know what you look at when determining something is in need of tuning. Can you see a percentage of sniper usage in high-ranked games to determine how successful they are in competitive play? Do you look at statistics in public matches such as win rates, score per minute, kill-death ratio, to see which guns are being used the most successfully with? Because if I do a quick search on XDefiant Tracker right now, I can see clear as day that most of the top players aren't using snipers. And if I look at some of the best sniper players that I've seen creating content, their stats are really not that great. Also, if you're actually looking at this data, seeing what weapons are standing out as strong, and then testing what specifically makes them strong, then why do all these nerfs for snipers make no sense at all and do nothing for balancing them? Why have you made 4 changes to Sniper Flinch and looking at a 5th? You've increased it again, then you've decreased it and looking at decreasing it again. You're going back on decisions that you've made 4 times already because none of them were correct. That's what I mean. These are bad balancing decisions that are creating bad game design that you now have to fix. But if you actually left Sniper Flinch how it was after its first iteration and allowed the meta to actually develop and people to discover effective countermeasures, then you probably wouldn't be in this position where you're looking at a 5th adjustment to Flinch. And you're right, there certainly are other factors, but I don't think these factors were considered at all. Because you implemented Sniper Flinch in its first iteration on June 12, 2024, then on July 2nd, you decided to scrap it completely and change how Flinch works. How do you expect the meta to develop and expect people to discover effective counterplay if you give less than 3 weeks before going back on your decision? That's what makes me think that you're not looking at the data. Furthermore, what data was there that showed sprint to fire speed specifically was too fast? What about spread reduction? Did you test spread reduction timings before changing it? because you changed it to match the sprint to fire time without taking into consideration that it no longer matches the aim down sight animation when standing still or walking. You've implemented a nerf that now makes it so that my gun's accuracy is inconsistent with the aim down sight animation. Now I understand that data isn't the end all be all, but what I'm trying to say is that there's crucial information that you clearly haven't looked at and haven't tested, and as a result you've created bad game design that you're now trying to fix for the 5th time or aren't even aware of yet. Mark goes on to say, but let's talk about where snipers are at. They are easy to use and relatively fast to fire, which is important on small arena maps. If they were too slow, they wouldn't be fun or viable. Now I think labeling snipers as easy to use is an oversimplification. It is true, but it's also not true. I'll be the first to admit, snipers have elements that make them easy to use in XDefiant, such as having rotational aim assist and seemingly larger hitboxes. I haven't compared the hitboxes to other games, but just from personal experience, it does seem like it's much easier to hit my target, which could just be the aim assist and I'm just tripping. But anyway, what I'm saying is that snipers can definitely be easy to use. But your solution to this problem was to keep snipers easy to use, but make even easier counterplay. That is bad game design. Snipers should be difficult to play as, but rewarding enough to keep them viable. Instead, you've made them easy to play as, and so unrewarding with such easy counterplay that you've made them the worst weapon class in the game. You're right, snipers should be fast in arena shooters, because arena shooters need to balance aggressive sniping in order for snipers to be viable. However, the TAC-50 and the L115 are not fast enough right now, and the M44 is too weak to be viable. If you're going to add this much flinch, which now adds more risk to sitting behind your scope longer, then snipers need to be made faster to compensate. Otherwise, you're just forcing snipers to play more defensive in a game that punishes you for being defensive. While I agree that snipers need to be fast in an arena shooter to keep them viable, what I don't understand is why this hasn't been the focus or the direction for snipers. In fact, it seems you're trying to go the opposite way of making snipers slower and giving them less aggressive options. In regards to sniper flinch, Mark says, now as a player getting hit by a sniper, you feel there was nothing I could do, especially if you start firing at the sniper first and they just turn and one-shot you. With flinch, if I fire against the sniper first, then I have a chance. And the flinch then creates the there was nothing I could do moment as well. So now both snipers and sniper victims have a chance to feel the nothing I could do moment. Now I know it's not a great feeling for either side, but if you want one-shot kill weapons in a game with higher time to kill, then that is the trade-off. Now I love this part here because he is so right. What Mark is essentially trying to say here is that there needs to be equal counterplay on either side, and I 100% agree with this. If you're playing against a sniper, or any weapon for that matter, you should never be left feeling like there was nothing you could do. Now flinch serves as a mechanism to stop snipers from tanking hits and still being able to shoot and kill players who have no other options. See, I would agree with this entirely if it was actually the case in XDefiant, but my feedback here is that it's not. After the first iteration of flinch, in less than 3 weeks, did you assess all countermeasures for regular gunners before you decided to increase flinch? Did you take into consideration that you've now created a problem where it's only the sniper player who gets that sense of there was nothing I could do, because you've increased flinch so much so that there's now no way for snipers to counter it? If I'm a sniper player, my gun is much slower to aim with, much slower to move with, and much slower to shoot with than a normal gun. That means that I need to be in position, spot my enemy first, aim first, and shoot first, all before my enemy even sees me. Because if we see each other at the same time, or if I'm slightly late and they spot me while I'm aiming, against any equally skilled player, they will win the gunfight regardless. Before, when you first implemented flinch and it was weaker, you had equal counterplay on either side. Regular gunners could mix in headshots, use movement to throw off snipers, and then reposition to get the kill. Meanwhile, sniper players still have the chance to counter the flinch and shoot any greedy players who missed follow-up shots and failed to reposition. That's what balancing flinch looks like, creating fair counterplay on either side. If I get shot at once by a regular gun that can aim much quicker than me, has 40 bullets in a fully auto magazine, there shouldn't be nothing else that I can do aside from disengage and reposition. You've created a situation where it's much more difficult for the sniper player to counter than it is for the regular gunner to counter. So that feeling of there was nothing I could do exists more for the sniper than it does for the regular gunner. Not only that, but there's so much more other options for countermeasures against snipers that I don't think have been considered. I already mentioned a few. Regular gunners could use movement to throw off snipers, they could mix in headshots with the first iteration of Flinch, and they could reposition. However, what about other things that indirectly nerf snipers like factions and abilities? Did you even consider that Phantoms and GSK are massive counters to snipers due to the added health and less headshot damage? Especially for the M44, those two factions essentially make the M44 completely useless. What about abilities like Spiderbot, Barbed Wire, Phantom's Wall? Echelon's Invisibility Cloak is another good way to approach snipers and close the distance. Instead of encouraging players to use all the tools at their disposal to counter snipers, you decided to make the counterplay for snipers as brain-dead easy as landing one bullet against them. That's exactly what I mean when I say they are poorly designed. The trade-off for snipers should never be keep them easy to use, but even easier to counter. It should be make them difficult to use and relatively difficult to counter. Snipers should be high risk and high reward. As a sniper player, you need to have a better understanding of map awareness and better positioning than everyone in the lobby, because if you make just one mistake, one miscalculation in your positioning, you are dead. If you miss a shot, you are dead. If you read the spawns wrong and allow a player to flank you, you are dead. Regular guns do not have this weakness. They are much quicker to move with, much quicker to aim with, and less risky overall. Regular gunners already have so many options to counter snipers, meanwhile snipers can only rely on having better positioning and map awareness. Your solution to counter snipers is essentially to give every other gun the ability to become a sniper only when used against a sniper. You can get hit by a pistol at long range and flinch so hard that there's nothing the sniper player can do to get the kill, basically turning every other weapon into a one-shot kill weapon only against snipers. That is way too easy counterplay. Yes, I am aware that you're looking at decreasing how sniper flinch works at a distance, which I do think will help. I just think that we shouldn't be in this position in the first place because the first iteration of Flinch was actually relatively balanced. Mark concludes the tweet by saying, "Anyway, that is our current take on snipers. I don't think there is only one right answer, and I'm happy to hear other takes, but for now that's where we are." So again, going back to what I said earlier, I do really like how he's engaging with the community, and I do trust that he listens and reads the feedback provided. Just whether or not he agrees with what I'm saying is a different thing. If the developers want to go in a direction for sniping that I don't agree with, that's fine. It's their game. I say this to people all the time. People who complain about movement in movement shooters should go play Valorant or CSGO. People who complain about quick scoping should go play Battlefield or Tarkov. I'll take my own advice if that's what they want to do with sniping in the future and make them more defensive. But the reason I'm so passionate about this topic is because I fell in love with this game for its aggressive sniping. And if you're going to take that away from us because people are complaining and don't want to learn how to play the game, then fine. I don't think the solution should ever be to take away options and limit a player's freedom of expressing their playstyles. And my feedback to the developers is to focus more on creating more options for counterplay rather than taking them away. If you want my advice, my suggestion to fix snipers would be making them more difficult but more rewarding. That would come with a mixture of nerfs and buffs in different areas. Start by removing rotational aim assist entirely from snipers and replace it with slowdown aim assist only. This encourages controller players to center their shots rather than drag scoping, and also helps balance keyboard and mouse and controller snipers. Next, reduce the damage for the TAC-50 and L115 slightly, or make it so that they need to aim at the upper body or head in order to get a one-shot kill. I think that the one-shot kill window may be too wide. As I said before, it's definitely easier to hit your shots as a sniper in this game. However, this needs to be carefully tuned because otherwise GSK and Phantoms would just destroy all snipers and not just the M44. Speaking of the M44, I'd personally like to see a damage increase. Otherwise, if they keep the damage the same, it shouldn't flinch nearly as hard as the longer range snipers. As for other buffs, the L115 and the TAC50 need to be made quicker, not by much, but definitely a noticeable amount. Aim down sight speeds need to be decreased, rechamber speeds need to be decreased, and reduce sprint to fire. Then fix spread reduction so that my gun's accuracy reaches 100% as soon as I see my scope. Look at other ways to indirectly nerf snipers, like a smoke grenade ability. Otherwise, personally, I think there are plenty of options to counter snipers, but people are just so hell-bent on complaining instead of exploring the tools the game has to offer. I've legitimately seen people complain about snipers tanking bullets and killing them when they're standing still out in the open challenging a sniper and missing all their follow-up shots. People are not actually trying to learn counterplay, they're just complaining because they don't know any better. Now, I'm all for making snipers harder to use because there's elements that do make them easy to use. However, what I'm against is trying to limit the way snipers play and trying to balance them by giving them easy counterplay instead of encouraging people to use all the tools at their disposal. I also want to say to people watching this video, if you disagree with any of the points I've made, feel free to leave a comment telling me why. If you agree, or maybe there's some other points that I have not considered, please feel free to join the discussion. I do think it's important that people are open-minded and well-educated, which has been my intent with my last few videos. I have seen some crazy comments in the XDefiant community. People saying that they don't think snipers should be in the game at all, or saying that players like myself rely on snipers to be good, which is just ridiculous. I'm not advocating for snipers to be overpowered, or to be used as shotguns at all ranges. I just want them to be balanced and well designed. That's all.